Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On a tiny island in Micronesia lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites on Earth, a city built entirely on artificial islands in a tidal lagoon, connected by canals, constructed from hundreds of thousands of basalt logs weighing up to 50 tons each, and completely abandoned centuries before Europeans arrived to record any memory of who built it or why. The local inhabitants of Pohnpei call it Nan Madol, the place between the spaces, and their oral traditions describe its builders as magicians who flew the stones through the air using the power of a flying dragon. The engineering reality is almost as difficult to explain as the legend. How did a Pacific island culture without metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or written language move and stack hundreds of thousands of basalt columns across open water to build a city covering 18 square kilometers? Where did the stone come from? Who organized the labor? And why did they abandon everything they had built and disappear? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. For as long as human beings have told stories, they have told stories about what was lost. Every great culture on Earth carries myths of a golden age, a time before the current order, when civilization stood taller, knew more, and reached further than anything that came after. For centuries, scholars categorized these stories as allegory, comforting fictions invented by cultures to explain the gap between their aspirations and their achievements. But a quiet revolution in archaeology, geology, and oceanography has changed that calculus. The evidence now accumulating from seafloors, ice cores, and ancient texts is demanding a fundamental revision of the human story, one in which the line between myth and memory is far thinner than we imagined. The conventional timeline of civilization holds that complex urban society first emerged in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. Before that, scattered farming villages, nomadic hunter-gatherers, and nothing more. But this tidy narrative has been challenged repeatedly by anomalous discoveries that do not fit the accepted sequence. Megalithic structures dated to 10,000 BC or earlier. Astronomical alignments encoded in monuments by cultures supposedly too primitive to understand the sky. Mathematical ratios embedded in architecture that would not be formally derived for thousands of years. These discoveries are not fringe fabrications. They are measured, published, and debated in peer-reviewed literature. They point toward a past far more complex than the textbooks describe. What happens when a civilization falls? Most of its knowledge disappears. The libraries burn, the engineers die, the farmers abandon the fields. Within a generation or two, the grandchildren of architects are living in the ruins of buildings they cannot build. We know this happened in the Bronze Age collapse of 1200 BC, when a networked civilization spanning the Mediterranean was destroyed in a matter of decades. We know it from the fall of Rome. History is not a steady march of progress. It is punctuated by catastrophic resets, after which humanity must begin again. The question is whether some of those resets happened far earlier than we know, and whether their traces are still waiting to be found beneath our feet. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Nan Madol consists of approximately 100 artificial islands constructed of basalt columns and coral, filled within a tidal lagoon on the southeastern shore of Pohnpei. The complex covers approximately 18 square kilometers and contains the remains of temples, royal tombs, residential platforms, and administrative buildings, all connected by a network of canals that served as the city's streets. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the basalt columns used in Nan Madol's construction are prismatic, naturally hexagonal in cross-section, formed by the cooling of volcanic rock, and originated from quarry sites around the island. The largest columns are approximately 9 meters long and weigh up to 50 metric tons. Experimental archaeology has shown that moving them across the lagoon on bamboo rafts, while possible, requires coordination of hundreds of workers. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Radiocarbon dating of materials from Nan Madol indicates that construction began approximately 1200 AD and continued until the abandonment of the site around 1628 AD. The Sordelur dynasty that built and ruled from Nan Madol controlled Pohnpei for approximately 500 years before being overthrown in a rebellion that may be connected to the site's abandonment. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the tomb of Nan Dawas, the largest structure at Nan Madol, consists of walls reaching 5 meters in height, built of interlocking basalt columns up to 5 tons, each stacked without mortar, using a log cabin technique. Despite its remote location and difficult access, the construction quality rivals ancient stone buildings anywhere in the world. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of magnetic anomaly studies of Nan Madol conducted by researchers from Osaka City University in 2016 detected unusual concentrations of magnetic minerals beneath several of the artificial islands, inconsistent with the natural local geology. The origin and significance of these anomalies has not been definitively explained. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Oral traditions on Pohnpei describe the Sordelur rulers as cruel and despotic, demanding tribute and labor on a scale that eventually provoked a successful revolt led by a culture hero named Isoklekel, who came from outside the island. This account, if it preserves any historical reality, suggests that Nan Madol was the coercive administrative center of a small but powerful island state. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Nan Madol was built by the Sordelur dynasty of Pohnpei using conventional Pacific Island construction techniques, organized community labor, bamboo rafts for transport, and several generations of continuous effort. The scale appears impossible, but is achievable over centuries with consistent institutional commitment. Similar labor mobilization is documented in other Pacific Island chiefdom traditions. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the magnetic anomalies beneath Nan Madol and the scale of construction suggest external influence or assistance beyond what Pohnpei's native population could provide, either contact with a more advanced external culture or a population size in the pre-contact period significantly larger than modern estimates allow. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Nan Madol served a primarily ritual and political function. It was the seat of a sacred kingship, whose authority derived from its apparent mastery of difficult construction, and the effort invested was deliberately disproportionate to any practical function, precisely to demonstrate the sacred power of the ruling lineage. The impracticality of the location was a feature, not a flaw. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes geological sourcing of the basalt columns has confirmed that the stone originated from multiple quarry sites around Pohnpei Island, including a major source at Socays in the north, confirming that the material was transported significant distances across open water to the construction site. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented radiocarbon dates from charcoal and organic material at Nan Madol confirm a construction period spanning from approximately 1200 to 1628 AD, consistent with the oral historical accounts of the Sordelur dynasty's rise and fall. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the submerged portions of Nan Madol's outer walls investigated by divers show construction extending below the current waterline, suggesting either that construction began when sea levels were slightly lower than today or that the outer sections subsided as the artificial fill settled. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Nan Madol was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2016, but its condition is precarious. Rising sea levels and storm surges are eroding the basalt platforms and undermining the artificial island foundations. Invasive mangrove growth is penetrating the stone walls and accelerating structural collapse. The site has been added to UNESCO list of World Heritage in danger. The race to document and stabilize Nan Madol before the ocean reclaims it is urgent, and it is a preview of what climate change will do to dozens of coastal and low-lying archaeological sites worldwide in the coming century. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific built by an unknown people. from the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Nan Madol ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.